Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, I hope everyone's having a fantastic day and an even better week. Today, we're going to jump straight in with a topic, I guess we could call it focus, right? Not camera focus, right? But focus. Oftentimes, we think of focus is a good thing, and it is. Focus on the task at hand, focus on what you're doing, right? Focusing on the road when we're driving down the road so we're not distracted, right? We think of focus being the higher minded thing to distraction, right? But we have to be guarded with focus because sometimes focus can be the very thing that leads us down a linear path. We can over focus, right? So, an example would be peripheral vision. When you're focusing on the road, that's a good thing. But what do they tell you, right? You're supposed to check your mirrors, check behind you, check, your side mirrors, da 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 da, all, follow the track, right? But that also helps to keep you alert, right? So you're focusing, but now you're focusing on your environment, right? It's a broader focus, essentially, right? But that peripheral vision, sometimes when we're over focused, we can be mesmerized or hypnotized into not paying attention as we should from to the lateral things going on around us. Lateral things, whether we're, and I'm using driving as an example, but it could be in life in general, right? So, an example I'll give you, a driving example, was I was on a 4 lane, it was basically a 2 lane, I guess you could say, highway through the mountains in Tennessee or through the hills. And they had expanded this particular section of road to be 4 lanes, which was actually quite a bit. I thought that was, great, but, so it was fairly wide, and it was a wider version. It wasn't like they weren't skimping on room on this thing. It had even had plenty of room on each side beyond those 4 lanes. But I was returning home, and I was on the far right lane, just cruising, and it was only like 35, maybe 35, 40. And but it was kind of up and around not a tight curve, but a kind of a broad sweeping curve to the right. So of course my focus is ahead. It was kind of a grayed out day, right? Sun was not out shining on me, but it was kind of a gray day. So things kind of, it was kind of a monochrome, I guess, monochrome day, and and barely picked up out of my peripheral vision this deer that was a smaller deer, but it started coming across the road, but it wasn't running to where it caught my vision. It was moving, kind of slow, and then picked up pace. And then it was almost like it was waiting for me on an intercept course. And then it took off across, maybe not seeing my vehicle, which was kind of a silver gray vehicle too, right? So it's a gray day, silver gray vehicle. That deer probably didn't have a chance, didn't really see me probably very well. And it was a smaller car, little Mazda Speed 3, was kind of, just kind of cruising along. And this deer, as it came across, it started picking up pace, but then when it did notice me, it tried to leap out of the way. Well, sadly, it clipped the front, but it tried to leap right as I hit its hind leg on the front of my car, and then it kind of did a barrel roll over the top of me and down over the embankment, which there's no way I could have found the deer. But so the next day, I kind of assumed that the deer probably didn't make it, but you just never know. But anyway, so this is an example, that's a tough example. I've hit deer before. Thankfully, I didn't get hurt, but you just, they're always sad when you hit anything unnecessarily. But if you can avoid it, right? And, but that's the thing. Even when we're focused and even when we're paying attention, things can get us, things can sneak up on us, right? We can overfocus in life, overfocus, this happens too with being a workaholic. And I have had moments in my life where I've been kind of a workaholic. Well, what do you take your attention off of if you're being more of a workaholic? And it might be due to projects that you're working, a certain segments of, your work where things are more intense and you're working longer hours, all the things. But what happens if you're over focused and in that kind of workaholic mode, right? You can what? Not pay attention to other things. It might be that I missed my doctor appointment, or I missed. You see what I'm saying? You can miss appointments, other things. Your self care falls to the wayside, right? So you don't. Maybe you're feeling worse. Your body's feeling worse because you're not getting the exercise, and maybe your diet's poor because you're not taking the time to take care of yourself there and rest as well, right? So sometimes we can put our own needs to the side to over focus, right? So hyper focusing on any one thing can be good in measure, but we have to be careful that we don't get so linear in our approach that things sneak up on us. Now, if you're a leader in an organization, one of the things that can happen too is if you get focused in on, we'll say, problematic situations. Let's say you have a product that you're making and engineers are coming to you and you're trying to work through a functional or technical aspect, right? So your energy is all in that and you're trying to do that. Well, what aren't you paying attention to if you're overly engulfed in those things? You're probably not taking care of your broader team if that's your responsibility. You're probably not doing enough in your management walks, your Gemba walks. You're probably missing it somewhere else. So what this ends up creating is kind of a whack-a-mole. Do you ever remember the game, the whack-a-mole thing, where I guess is what it was called, when you go to the fair when you're a kid and it pops its head up and you hit it with a hammer and then it pops its head up somewhere else? That's the whack-a-mole, right? You're always chasing, kind of like you're chasing your tail, right? You're taking care of this thing, then this thing flares up or becomes a problem. You take care of this thing, maybe you're taking care of your team, and then you have technical issues. You're taking care of technical issues in your team, and then maybe there are customer concerns or questions. Say warranty questions, and you're dealing with those sorts of things and working through the minutia of, hey, what do we do with new products? The management and the admin side of these things. So you have to realize, and many of you do if you're leaders already, is that your chair, even though you shouldn't be in it all the time, it does swivel 360 degrees for a reason. I used to say that your chair turns 360 degrees for a reason if you're leading anything, because there is always something going on outside your view. And it's up to you to make sure you're divvying up your time in a healthy way. Now, see, there is very little difference between doing that in an organization as a leader and managing your own life, right? You've got to rest, you got to get exercise, you got to eat correctly, right? Got to stay connected to the ones you love and care about. You have all the things, right? Really no different, right? And no different to have balance within your organization. Now, I'm kind of led in with leadership, but it doesn't matter if you're broader team members. If you're getting hyper focused in one area, then you're probably not anticipating things, okay? Or you're being mesmerized or hypnotized in the few tasks that you're doing, and you may be missing something. So what ends up happening is over time, let's say you have an ISO audit or any kind of audit, really, an audit comes through and everybody starts to go, oh my gosh, because they haven't been looking at big enough pieces of the pie, of the organizational responsibilities, and they have maybe let off the gas on the oversight of certain things. Sadly, this is where safety comes into play, right? We can take things for granted. Well, we've got these things we need to fix for safety. Folks, that is just not an area you want to make exceptions in. Safety is something you've got to get on right away and knock those things out and take care of those things. Your people, their health and safety are your primary first focus in every aspect. Doesn't matter what part of your operation we're talking about. Now, to take that a little step further, the safety of your customers based on the product that you produce or the service you provide, right? That is also secondarily, because you obviously got to make sure the team's good before you can, put your own gas mask on first, right? So it's that sort of thing where you have to take care of the safety of the team. Now, everything else, if you think about it, is essentially an extension of safety, right? If I'm taking care of product and service, I'm really looking out for everybody's well-being. Well, isn't that safety? It is. well-being is safety. So if you over focus, what do you think you're doing? You're not being safe. If you're not, if you're over focused, and I'd come back to the driving situation. These situations catch us because our vision is narrow. We're hypnotized, right, by whatever we're over focusing on, and safety situations can kind of get us. So we have to be careful. And we have to realize that by doing this in a leadership principle, or whether we're doing this functionally in our own life, is going to lead to better outcomes, right? Safer, more healthy outcomes. It doesn't matter what aspect of health we're talking about, healthier outcomes. So be careful not to over focus, and it can be a challenge too, because some tasks for some team members can be very ones where they have to focus, right? But sometimes we just need to have a good conversation with our team, talk to them, keep their energy level up. Don't let them drift, right? If they get stagnant, this is where cross training is a helpful thing in an organization, because you don't want your team to become stagnant, not only for development reasons, which is so important. You want your team to all to develop their skills, knowledge, skills, and abilities, but also so they stay fresh, right? So they're doing the same thing for too long, and you don't give them maybe other tasks. And it also can be more difficult if they're specialized, if they're welders, right? If they're welders and they aren't necessarily assemblers, your assemblers aren't going to just jump in and weld, right? Because they don't have those skill sets or those certifications, and vice versa. They may not be applicable, right? So you do have limitations, but within those limitations, do your best to try to give folks some other things, try to mix it up a little bit, so they don't get stagnant, they don't get bored, right? Because we can. Uh, and that's just difficult. That's just part of where, the word work comes from, right? That's where the work is. That's why it's work. But also, and two, this is where encouragement, doing your management walks and appreciation and communicating that to your team, um, have fun with your team too, right? So bring a little fun, a little levity, and keep things light. Don't let people get heavy about things, and positive and hopeful, right? As leaders, it doesn't matter at any level. You could just be a lead in a production facility. It doesn't matter. You want to make sure it's like a garden. You want to make sure there's plenty of soil, rich soil, water, all the good things, and that is how we treat and take care of our our team members. We do that the same way a gardener takes care of a garden. Okay. All right, folks, don't want to overdo it. Just a little conversation today about focus. Don't get over focused to the point where you're losing track of other things in your life, especially taking care of yourself and taking care of your team members. Because remember, if it's not for your team and yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of the customers. And then everything starts to implode from there, and it just gets worse and much more difficult to dig out of that. And don't get over fixated on problematic areas, project things. This is where delegation, if you're a leader in a particular organization, and that one aspect or another, is delegate to those who can solve the problem best, right? So if my engineers have the skill sets, pass that off to them. If it's maintenance, if it's any operations level personnel, if it's admin, whatever, delegate appropriately. Don't try to take so much on that your focus, your over focus, your workaholism basically is you're trying to take too much on. And what's happening then is you're missing other things. So maybe you're not taking care of your team. And if this is stemming from a fear or lack of confidence in an area to lead a team or to communicate with the team, then you're more likely going to push the thing that you don't want to deal with off to the side. But that thing is going to then start eating away at your team. Essentially, it's going to eat away at your organization. It's going to eat away at your productivity and quality. It's going to eat away at everything. So it's like tires. We have to get our tires replaced when required, because we can't just afford to have tires going bad on us, right? And they're very important. So, all right, folks, just a conversation today about focus. Hope you're having a great day. Hit that good green domino 3 to 5 times a day to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage everyone. And when you do that, not only helping transform culture, but we're transforming ourselves And that's very important. Never take that for granted. Always be growing, right? All right, folks, hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.